This soldering iron is available for 245 rands from Mantech. You never want to leave a soldering iron switched on and unattended. So we've got the soldering iron set on its lowest temperature. The point has taken the solder very nicely. What you can do is wipe away the excess solder. It does say degrees Celsius, but I'm not too sure if that is a genuine read back from the tip thermometer dial, or if it's just hotter and colder on the heating element. We'll investigate this iron a little bit later on, but I'm quite pleased with the results so far. And you'll see that this soldering iron is plenty hot enough to get the job done, and that's on the lowest temperature. So that's pretty encouraging. And that's a wonderful join. That's not bad. If a soldering iron is too cold, the solder will form lumps and clumps, and it won't be terribly easy to work with. But if the soldering iron is too hot, that's also not great. Notice how we go in quite quickly and we get out quite quickly. Even for quite challenging joints, I've used the soldering iron on its lowest temperature setting. And I would advise you to, from the outset, set it to the lowest temperature setting and use it like that. The thing about soldering, folks, is it's a practical type of an activity. It's not something you read books about. You actually get a soldering iron, get some electronic stuff, and just get on with doing the soldering yourself. And the more soldering you do, the better it will get. So you can see this soldering iron is quite capable of getting in quickly, soldering the joint and getting out again. This iron is worth every single cent of 245 Rand. Don't leave soldering irons on all the time or overnight, because you'll come back and find that the tip is gone, and then you've got to try and retin the tip, but you might end up with pitting on the tip, which is not great. Make sure the soldering iron is unplugged from the main supply, because you can get a shock. You can undo here and remove these parts. This is quite nice because that is a standard tip. These are quite common and quite easy to obtain replacement tips. Undo this part here. Take your fingernail and you catch your fingernail under that part. It comes off relatively easy. Remove the circuit. Probably a little bit of a pull there and a bit of a push here. And be careful, this is the inside of the iron, pretty solid. This circuit that you're looking at is a mains dimmer circuit. Similar to in your dining room, you may have a switch on the wall with the dial, and you can turn down the brightness of the lamp. Most important to note, coming out of the heating element over here, you only have two wires. There's a wire there. If you turn it over, there's a wire there. Those wires are to the heating element. If you had four wires coming out, two wires coming out here, two wires coming out here, that would mean that you've got a temperature reading device, probably a K-type thermistor, inside of the ceramic heating element. But this entry-level, affordable soldering iron doesn't actually have that feature. What that really means is this little temperature dial is not actually giving you a temperature. This soldering iron works on the idea that it's reasonably well thermally balanced. If you turn the temperature right down on this iron, don't operate it without the cover, you'll get a horrible electric shock which could be potentially lethal. If you turn it down, it's a really nice thermally balanced soldering iron. And if you turn it up to there, it's very, very hot. I wouldn't run it at that hot setting. You're going to damage your robot kit, you're going to damage printed circuit boards. You can always leave this iron on the coolest setting. The soldering iron that you see up on the screen right now, that would be my first choice. You just dial the temperature in. You can dial in 340 degrees, 360 degrees. If you're doing a job where you need extra heat, you can bump the heat up You have a real-time 7-segment LED digital display of the temperature, but at 1,800 Rand, that's quite a lot of money if you're just getting started in robotics. Maybe you would be better off spending your money on electronic parts, bits for your robot, Bluetooth modules to link your robot to the Internet of Things. A soldering iron like this is quite capable of doing excellent work if you are careful in the way you use it, if you wipe it on the sponge every time you pick it up, if you keep the temperature dial down low,